I would see your name on like guitar transcriptions for magazines, and I guess Hal Leonard books you would done also.
Oh God, yeah, many.
Yeah, and
many of those going back to the 80s, through the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, and
yeah,
it's like 37 years or something, since I first worked with Cherry Lane. There was a magazine called Guitar for the Practicing Musician.
Right.
And then in the mid-90s, 94, I went over to Guitar World, and I still do stuff for Guitar World, but I was doing books for Hal Leonard and Warner's and everybody in between.
Right. And I was just going to say, it was funny. I mean, I wouldn't have been old enough then, but I guess you were local, and I'm pretty sure those are national, if not international publications.
That's right.
And it seemed like your name, just at least the stuff I listened to, the stuff that I liked, you were generally involved with. And it would have been, especially then, as a teenager, like really super cool to be able to see you actually play live, and not even realizing it would have been somewhat of an option. It wasn't like you lived in California, let's say, or something like that.
No, it was probably like 5 miles from where you live.
Right. So I realized that at some point, probably when the internet came around, and then just was easier to kind of like learn more about people, basically. And then somewhere along the way, I saw your bio or something like that. Maybe I saw you a show that you were doing promoted. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I realized that you were local well, my parents are still on Long Island. So I'm there every so often.
Cool.
I guess the motivator to reach out to you was just kind of curious more about your path, and like how you did it, basically. I mean, I got my master's in music about 5 years ago at this point.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, at Portland State University, jazz studies.
Fantastic.
Discussing a little bit about your take on, I guess, the modern industry, making it in the industry.
Wow.
Maybe how the internet comes into play in terms of like marketing yourself with the various platforms out there, and
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of things that people do that that I'm not doing that I should be doing. So as far as utilizing the internet to communicate with people, for me it's been mostly Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I don't know what TikTok is. My daughter was explaining it to me yesterday. But I could tell you that just via Facebook and Instagram, I've been communicating with so many people. Like, as you may know, I wrote a biography of Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh, I didn't realize that. When did that come out?
That came out in August.
Oh, okay. It's brand new.
Relatively new, yeah. And Stevie was a guy that I got to know. I interviewed him a lot of times.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is my old guitar. Every time we got together, he would play this guitar. This is an old 61 Strat I bought when I was 17 years old. And so I interviewed him a lot of times. I got to play with him once. He died in 1990, so he died almost this summer. August 27th will be the 30th anniversary of his passing, so it's a long time. But after he died, then I was writing stories about him because he had died. It was a terrible thing. Got to know Chris Layton and Tommy Shannon, the guys in Double Trouble, the band he played in.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the late 90s, they had heard me play, and I was recording with them and playing some shows with them. And so anyhow, I would say over the last 25 years, I established a close relationship with them and became very friendly. I'd go stay at Tommy Shannon's house whenever I went to Austin and wrote a lot of stories. So over all those years, I had a tremendous amount of content, and I never really thought specifically about writing a biography of Stevie Ray Vaughan until a friend of mine, Alan Paul, who had written a biography of the Allman Brothers called One Way Out. That was a successful book. He wrote it for St. Martin's, and he got on the New York Times bestseller list. So they asked him, "You want to write another book?" He said, "Yeah, I'd like to write a book about Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I want to do it with my friend Andy." Me and Alan have been friends for 25 years.
Mm.
So, so the book came out in August, and it made the New York Times bestseller list, which is great. And the director, Richard Linklater from Dazed and Confused and Boyhood and some other films, he's making a documentary right now from the book. And then a prominent Hollywood actress contacted us, and she wanted to license the book to do a feature film. So we're waiting for that. This is all meant to answer your question. Facebook and Instagram and Twitter were extremely useful in getting the word out and creating slideshows and audio and video and all these things related to the book. And St. Martin's said to both of us, you know, you guys did an incredible job marketing the book, because we made the New York Times bestseller list and we sold a lot of books. And so it's spun off in its way, you know, using those platforms. As I say, there's other platforms, but utilizing those platforms for me to get other, you know, get students. I have a TrueFire channel. I've done a lot of instructional stuff for TrueFire. So I have students, you know, virtual students through TrueFire. You know, the money part, you know, Fire pays a good royalty, and it's great doing instructional stuff for them. And teaching, you know, Skype and Zoom lessons has been great. And, you know, I have CDs, so communicating with more and more people in the sort of the network growing of people that I talk to directly, like yourself, has been a really useful thing. I could tell you a record that I made 20 years ago called Put a Sock in It, out of the blue, but it happened because of Facebook. An Italian record producer contacted me and said he wanted to reissue the album. And so we did. So we just did that. It's remastered and reissued. And it's on Apple Music, so people can listen to it on iTunes and buy it from there.
Under your name?
Oh, yeah. It's Andy Aledort and the Groove Kings is the band. So, and then I have another record called Live at North Star. So in my attempt to answer your question, just from, you know, putting as much out there, you know, like, you know what it's like getting emails every day from either from a guitar store or from somebody else, or in the deluge of information that people are getting hit with in the digital realm. I have realized that it's really, you kind of have to kind of, you know, really be immersed in it as much as possible, almost on a daily basis, you know. So I didn't do this for a long time. It's only the last like 2 years. I'm posting different things almost daily, and it's just, it's worked out in the sense of people start to look for it, you know, like people look for my Facebook Lives. I just finished a Facebook Live at 4 o'clock. I went from 2 to 4, 2 hours. And what I do on the Facebook Lives 3 times a week is people just ask me for songs, and I just call them up on iTunes and play along to them, you know, and try to figure them out in the moment. You know, it's really fun with songs I have never heard in my life. I try to figure them out like in that split second. Play them.
But they kind of skew, I imagine, the requests skew towards classic rock, blues, you know, like your wheelhouse, basically, I imagine.
Yes, they do. There's a lot of Hendrix and Johnny Winter and, you know, Allman Brothers, and people might ask about slide guitar or blues phrasing or Stevie Ray Vaughan or turnarounds, or, you know, I'm not getting a lot of questions about how to play Wes Montgomery tunes, which is good, because I wouldn't necessarily have the answer to all those questions. I mean, I've studied jazz, and I took lessons from Pat Martino for a while back in 1978. And I love all that stuff, and, you know, can play it to a degree. But, you know, I wouldn't call myself a jazz guitar player. And, you know, I'm not one of those people who I could play 100 standards off the top of my head or anything like that, you know. I'm just a different kind of guitar player. So I would say to any guitar player, you know, just put as much stuff out as you can, as possible, as often as possible, and people start to get used to seeing you.
I imagine you don't spend too much time. If I don't know, are you talking about videos? You make videos, or not even that? Is it just the going live?
It's not exactly every day. I just meant a post. Like I probably post something every day, and then I share it to like a shitload of pages. If I do it on, usually if I do it anywhere, I'll share it everywhere. Pat Martino, from his personal collection, put out a live recording called Young Guns. That he's 25 years old. You know, it's from like 1967 or 68, or maybe he's even a little younger, like 23. And Lance, it's like the most amazing. It's like, I mean, if you're familiar with Pat Martino, you know how amazing he is, and it's unbelievably amazing by that standard already. Like it's just, and so I might just put a tune up and say, you know, a year ago, Pat Martino put this out from his personal collection, and then I'll share it everywhere. And even though it's not me and my playing, people, you know, weigh in and they have something to say. And so technology today enables you and me to get together, and it enables you to reach out to the world. But I think the way you have to cut through, because there's so much content, is to just do it a lot.
Yeah.
So, you know, like if you know the guitar player.
That's what I like getting at is if you do it a lot, you know, sort of like the quality versus quantity conundrum. So if you do it a lot, you know, it's harder to spend too much time like really refining any given piece of content if you're going to do it almost every day. Because I get hung up on this. It's like, oh no, it's pretty good, but do I go with pretty good? Or I mean, I know if I spend more time on it, it'll be better. But is it worth it? It's like is it just diminishing returns on that?
Oh no, I hear you. If I'm gonna have the mindset that I want to really have control over every iota of something, I'm gonna have to spend time on it. It's not just necessarily gonna fall out like in the greatest way possible.
One take, yeah.
But at the same time, there's something about the live one taker, you know, that can be just as good, if not better. But it might have, you know, like a clam in it or something in it that isn't my favorite thing in the world. But there's something about it that, you know, it's got life in it, and it's got spontaneity and urgency and all of those things. So, you know, like I toured with Tiki Betts for 12 years, and, you know, you kind of get in this sort of acceptance where playing is like talking, like you and I talking right now. So like if it took me a minute to find the right word in our conversation, I don't think you would hate me for it. Maybe you would. I don't know. I don't know you that well. But it's the same thing in guitar playing. If you present it that way, and it's just this communication that has that informal immediacy to it. I mean, I can't play with absolute perfection. I can't do it. You know, so I wouldn't know what that would be like. But there is something to be said for learning to make it happen in the moment. So the beautiful thing about all of this is that you can shoot something in QuickTime, let's say, and spend time on the audio or spend no time on the audio, whatever. And you can fix the mistakes depending on how you go about doing it. If you're recording in another medium like Pro Tools or something, you know, you could punch in, but the video is still going to be the video, so you wouldn't be able to tell, you know, and you know, if you were playing an exact thing, something very specific. I don't do that. I'm more interested in just playing. So, and most of those things that I'm going to do are intended to be instructional lessons that I'm sending to people. Or I'm creating something that I'm going to put on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's me just sort of playing and demonstrating something. And so invariably, there might be something that I don't like. Well, I edit it out. You know, I put a live CD out. Is it 100% live? Yes. but is it 100% exactly the way it was played? Like for the people that were standing in the room that night, it is not.
Uh-huh.
You know, I took sections out, I flew things around, given the freedom to make it better.
Sure. We have the
you know,
technology, and so it behooves us to leverage the technology.
yes, but to try to answer your question in a better way, I want to get the content out there. If I obsess over it too much, then, I'll go from never putting anything out, to putting out 100 things a day. There's some middle ground in there. So I'm not putting 100 things out a day, but I'm not letting my hangups of worrying about it too much stop me from putting things out because I feel like they're not perfect. I've decided that doesn't do me any good to look at it that way.
Yeah.
This is a common conversation, I have to say.
Yeah.
And something that just came up recently in talking about it, John Scofield, the guitar player, John Scofield?
Scofield, one of my favorites.
Me too.
Yeah.
So John is a guy that I got to know. I have to say I feel lucky that I've gotten to know John, and he's somebody I would call a friend. I first started going to see John play in the 70s, and then I met him in the mid-80s, and I hung out with him enough that we became friends. So I've been friends with him for about 30 years, at least 35 years, which is great. He's the greatest guy, and been to his house many, many times. And he came and played with me a couple of times at this place called North Star up in Pound Ridge, not that far from his house in Katona. And, it was really exciting to have John Scofield come and sit in with my band,
Sure.
But this is like a long time ago. I asked him, he put a new record out. I can't remember what record. And I asked him what he thought of it. And he said, I have no idea. He said, I stopped judging my own playing like years ago because he said, if I think about it too much, I'm not going to like any of it. So he said, so I don't know. He goes, it just is what it is. I don't judge it anymore.
Yeah. Reminds me of, I don't know who said it or if it's common thought, but playing more difficult stuff compared to playing easier things, the response was like, it's all hard or it's all easy. Like there is no such thing as, sort of levels of difficulty. I mean, I think you need to get to a certain level before you can say that, but I've tapped into that occasionally.
Well, I mean, this is the nature of it all. Gil Evans' quote was, playing music is a bar of heaven and a bar of misery. It's not even like a song of heaven and a song of misery. Like it's changing by the bar.
Right.
And that's just how it is. And I always make golf analogies. I don't know if you play golf, but you have like one moment to hit the ball. That shot on that hole, wherever, whether it's the drive or the second shot or the putt or coming out of a track, like you're supposed to make something happen in that moment. And hopefully the result is what you're going for. And it's not always, I mean, that's definitely true for me as a golfer. So it's a lot like guitar and music, because if you play golf every day, you stop worrying about whether every shot's going to be a perfect shot because you have another shot coming, imminently. So it's the same thing with playing. The more you play, it's sort of like if you're in the pool, then you're in the pool and you're swimming around, and you end up taking pressure off yourself. This is how I think of it anyway. It doesn't become so precious. It's okay. Like I'll accept the warts and all. They're going to be there anyway. It made me think of another thing in a conversation with Scofield where he said, it's so often that the things you hate most about your own playing are the things that other people like about your playing because it sounds like you.
Yeah.
It's like looking in the mirror. You hear it and go, oh God, it's that thing I do that I'm so sick of and I can't stand it. And other people are like, what was that?
Definitive of your style to them.
Yeah. So it's like listening to your own voice on a recording. You go, oh my God, it's so horrible.
Sure. I've certainly had that experience of doing recordings, and then it's like, oh, I need to make a overdub there. It's like, and then my feedback from others will be, oh, that I kind of like that. It kind of works actually, and it's sounds like nails on the chalkboard to me every time I hear it, but to them it's like over their head. They don't recognize it as that. They don't see it that way.
And I find that for myself in my own playing too. Is like I'll remember that I hated something. But I'm listening to it and I'm like, I don't know why I hated this.
Yeah, right.
Not that horrible. So like that, all that neurosis of the moment from then is gone. Yeah. So I'll just thought of two other things that are so great, and they're like the diametric, completely different aspects of exactly the same thing. Joe Satriani told me, and that's something that Mike Stern told me. Two guys that are both great guitar players, definitely have a lot of technique. Like, whether you're a fan of their playing or not, they're very accomplished.
Yeah.
Instrumentalists. Let's put it that way. And they've made a career for themselves as guitar players. Anyway, so Joe told me a story. He was in this, and he hated everything, and he was miserable. And he was like, I got to get out of here. Like, everything he played and everything he heard, he hated. Like, he just got in the worst head. And he's like, I have to clear my mind. So he said he drove to the beach, got out of his car, and he was just sitting there listening to the water and just trying to, and he said a car pulled up far away in the parking lot, and they were playing music. But, it wasn't loud, but he could hear it. So right away it was annoying. It was like, oh, I came out here to get some peace of mind, and now I hear this, Yeah. And then he said he started to listen, and it was like this really sort of hairy guitar playing, and he was thinking, you know what? He goes, this is exactly the kind of playing I hate. It's like everything that's wrong. And then he realized it was one of his records.
Yeah.
It was himself. And he was like, oh my God. So that was like an amazing moment. He was, saw himself in this light, and he was like, I hate that. I don't want to do that.
But at some point, he obviously signed off on it and said, book it,
Well, yeah, but he's in this other frame of mind right now, which is very reflective. Right. And whatever you want to say, he's hearing his own playing, his own music from a different perspective. And he's like, I can't stand that, and I don't want to do that. I got to do something else. Yeah. The other side of that coin is Mike Stern, same situation, in the studio, miserable, hating everything. He's like, I have to go home. This is just not working. And, something to be said, to be learned from that in and of itself. Two guys that are so great, are in the middle of making records and have to go home because they hate every single thing they played. And it's, not a productive situation. So Stern said he got in a cab, and he's like filled with self-loathing, and there was music on. The guy had the radio on, and it was very, very low. And he wasn't really listening. And then he started to listen. It was like filtering in, and it was jazz. And he thought, this is really nice. Like, why can't I sound like this? And it was one of his own records. Mm. This thing will kick your ass every minute. I mean, John McLaughlin said to me, he said, playing music, playing an instrument is a war that you have to fight every day, and you will lose. That's what he said. He goes, you will lose unless you fight. And he goes, if I don't play enough one day, it takes me 2 days to get back to where I should be.
Sure.
And I'm talking about some of the greatest players we know.
Right, of course.
Who are like suicidal. So if they're feeling that way, I think it's okay if we have our own sense of insecurity too.
It's almost hard to imagine because there's such legendary players and like so highly regarded. And we're all human, of course, but just they're so accomplished and so revered. But yes, it is a sobering reminder.
And I don't know if you know the Jimi Hendrix quote, when he was on Dick Cavett, And Cavett said to him, you know, some people think you're the greatest guitar player in the world. And he's like, no, 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 no. And as a joke, he goes, let's just say you're the best guitar player in the TV studio tonight. And Hendrix goes, let's just say I'm the best guitar player sitting in this chair.
Right. I've seen that interview. Yeah.